LOR stuff, it was always one of those things where we always loved dogfighting. So it just seemed natural to have this tournament where it was just a one-on-one thing. And the concept was called Lord of the Rings, kind of the same time around the movies and everything else, whatever. But it was what it's called. And the idea is there was a ring, and I actually have one. There's a ring with a button. I have to find it, and it has a button on it. And whoever won that event got the Lord of the Rings, right? So you'd have this cool little login button and everything else.
So it's not about being in a ring at all. Everybody thinks it's about being in a ring, but it's actually originally it was about having a ring.
Right, having a ring. So then we take a room, right? And we decide, okay, we're gonna make a space. And we ended up deciding that I think it was a 10-foot circle is what we ended up on at the end of the day. So, you do the 10-foot circle, and that becomes where you have to stay in and you can't leave those lines. And in the very beginning, it was actually a one-on-one system. So if you would imagine having like a dartboard, right, where you had the 0 in the middle, and then on the outskirts you had the 2, and then on the outskirts you had 3. And the way it worked is you would just walk into this was the first Lord of the Rings at Nationals. You'd walk into the room. We had it in a little party room, it was pitch black, and you would have your little name tag, and you would be on the outskirt of the circle. And what you would do is if you wanted to play, you would say, hey, I'm next or whatever, get in your queue, and you would put yourself onto who you're challenging in this thing of circles. And if you beat your opponent, you would take a spot and you would move one place lower. And then, people would play their cycles, whatever, and then people would shift and move in and out of the circle continuously. And that's kind of how it kept going in the very beginning. So it was kind of like a free for all. There was no like grid for it or system. It was just like, hey, I'm free. I'm sitting around. I want to play a game. I challenge you. Let's go. And then if I take your spot, and then if you're sitting there and you're in the circle, somebody might challenge you. So you're just kind of hanging around waiting for somebody to challenge you. And then you defend your spot against whoever challenged you. So that's kind of how it was in the beginning. It was very like, I don't want to say it was disastrous in the very beginning. It was a lot of fun, but it wasn't taken very serious, I think, at that time. I think that was also the year of the V5s. And the V5s were like, a fresh V5 is like, the lasers on them were, for people that have experienced it, it's like a very high-tuned Nexus pack, if you will, with like the phaser on full blast, same concept.
So V5 was essentially V4, but they put the multicolored LEDs in, didn't they? So they could be any color LED. And was there any other significant changes from V4
yeah,
to
so the laser was a change. It went from the ticking to the hand sensor on the top where the light would come off and there'd be no ticking anymore. So the shape of the laser was slightly different. The cord was different. We had more of a springy cord with more flexibility than the tight cord on the V4s. The plastic on the V5s was clear now, so you can shoot through those sensors, and the IR was much more powerful on those lasers, so you could get away with doing more of the fancy swooping and spinning and swiping and behind, over the shoulder, behind the back, those kind of like tricky little things that you have to be like super accurate on the V4s. Now you can kind of do them on like a little bit of a quick movement with the V5. So it made it more like like a dance. To me, it's always been like a dance. Just V5 just made it a much smoother dance for me because everything just flowed, and when you shot, you hit, and things went down. With V4, it was like it was like one of those gritty back and forth kind of things. With the V5s, you didn't go back and forth more than 3 times. If you went back and forth more than 3 times, it was this beautiful display of people spinning around and doing their dodging and then shots being missed because you typically would hit with the V5s a lot easier. We even had to tune down the IR on those. So after that Nationals, I believe there was I didn't win that one, the very first one. I was in the circles, but I didn't. It was one of those things where I was interested in winning, but I didn't want to do too much because it was my breakout year, if you will, at the time. So I believe at the end, it was like Nomad, who was one of the Bad Karma members, against FX, who was a player from, I think, I want to say he was from Miami somewhere. And then they ended up playing, and I think the guy from Miami won. After that, the system kind of changed a little bit, and we ended up kind of incorporating some different ideas for Lord of the Rings throughout the years. And eventually, it became a one-on-one. We decided that with 2 people, that was one of the issues of the very first Lord of the Rings. There was 2 people. So when one person was down, the other person, there was just a lot of like nothing going on. And with the V5s, the dancing didn't happen very often. It was one person just kind of dominating the other person for the majority of the ring. So we added the element of the third person, which then changed it dramatically because now you have to manage the timing, you have to manage the stuns, because you know that if you shoot one guy and then shoot the other guy, and now they're going to come up at the same time, you hit a stun, and then you hit a stun, or if you hit the first one and you hit a stun, now you split. So there was a lot of strategy involved in that, how to time out your opponents, so that you have that time to turn around and get the other opponent. Because it's really hard, and for smart players, I'm sure you know by now, that if you're playing the Lord of the Rings and you do that where you shoot one and the other, right? That second person that shot, that person has advantage. If that person's smart, he's going to reposition himself somewhere where when these two people come up in battle, no matter which one of the two people win, they're going to have a hard time locating you within that 1 second to shoot you, because you're going to position yourself in a way that they have to do something with their body or physically move to find you. And at that point, you're hoping to drop and take the easy shot, take them down. And then now you're stuck in that situation, because even though he took down that guy that 1 second, you took down that one guy. So now he has an advantage coming back up. So he should be doing the same thing. So little things just started developing, and then just became a matter of timing and understanding, counting packs in your head, counting DX in your head, right? Understanding how many times you've been down, not necessarily the full count, but knowing that I'm 1 ahead of him. I'm 2 ahead of him. Okay, he's 1 ahead of me now, or he's 2 ahead of me now. I don't even know exactly how many. I just need to know roughly where I'm at sitting between the numbers. And you can do that, when you're playing Lord of the Rings and paying attention, especially back in the day when you could check your DX count on your pack and things like that. You hold on the trigger and it would read out how many DX you had. So you kind of be like, okay, normally in an LOR game, you shouldn't have more than this. If you're at this number, you're winning. If you're below 10, you're definitely winning that LOR.
So this is the second year. What year was this? The second year
So the second year was 90. So the first year was that we did this. Let's see. This was 90. This was 90. This is the R1 solos was the first year. So that was 90. Sorry. 96 was the first LOR. 97 was the second nationals where we did. I'm sorry. I'm confusing myself here. Second nationals was when we did the very first LOR. Third nationals was when we had the whole new system down 4 with the 3s.
And the third nationals was the 98 or 90?
Yes. So it was 96, 97, and 98.
Okay, so 97 we did the first LOR. 98 is it fair to say 98 was taken a lot more seriously in terms of the level of competition and things like that? Like people really wanted to win it?
Yeah, I think so. I think 98 was probably the most, it was funny. I remember going to the very first one, and people would set up tents around the parking lot area. So people would have their camps, and then because we have a big parking area and we have another parking area in the back around the building. So, it's Vegas, it's hot for whatever reason. People park their trucks and have water, and then people build tents, and all of a sudden every team was in like their own little tent, and it was like this really weird, like look around, analyze your enemies kind of like, it was a really like eerie, weird vibe. And I wasn't even on a team that year. I was just there for the events, for the solo and the doubles, and I could see that. And every year it continued to be that way, where people would start to camp out and they would have all their groups, and little by little people started mingling. There was a lot of even screaming and yelling in the parking lot. Like there was one year where one team, I believe it was the Miami team, ended up punching a hole through the window of their van that they drove from Miami all the way to Vegas, because they celebrated, because I think they beat us, or I want to say they beat us. That was one of the losses that we ever took, and they were so happy and ecstatic that one of their dudes just punched the window through the van.
Of course.
So yeah, so we, the environment there was very cool. We had a lot of teams show up, and a lot of people, there, and you're
playing the LOR. Were you playing anything else in the car park, or was just everybody rocked up to the car park, set up their tents, and watched everybody else play LOR? Is that how it worked?
So there was a variety of different things. So the LOR, the very first one, was indoors. Eventually, we took them outside, and people would watch some of the stuff outside. But it was just where we would just hang out. I think it was mainly because like back in the day, a lot of people smoked, I guess, and kind of that was like the safe haven was to sit outside the front where they could smoke and mingle and kind of just hang out. So it's more of just like the setup for the tournament, right?
Okay.
We didn't really have, like, we weren't prepared with like cameras and seating arrangements and for everybody, so there wasn't room for everybody inside the building. So people kind of set up camps outside early on with all the teams.